5 Live Daily with Adrian Childs.
It's getting on for 2211. A change to the way child maintenance payments are made could end up with many parents going without any money and ending up in yet more bitter hours with their exes. That's a warning from the single-parent charity Gingerbread as the government begins the latest phase of moving people to the new system. James Maguire is a divorce lawyer. James, can you explain in the broadest terms how it's changed from the old CSA and where we're going with it?
Yes, good morning. Since 2014, the government have introduced the child maintenance service, and that is replacing the old child support agency. So what's happening at the moment is that people under the old CSA regime are receiving letters from the Secretary of State giving them notice that their case is going to close, and they have the option to go on to the new child maintenance service, or they can agree something directly between themselves as parents for the maintenance for their children.
So, and the old system, the theory was that classically you had an errant father. It could be the other way around, but a father who wasn't contributing, and the CSA would, in theory, chase them and get the money out of them. Now, in practice, it didn't work like that, did it, all the time? But that was, broadly speaking, how it was supposed to work.
It was a regime for parents, stereotypically a mother, to say, OK, maintenance needs to be paid. If the father doesn't pay voluntarily, I'll go to the CSA and the government will collect the money for me.
Okay, so now the system works differently when the onus is on you to make the arrangement voluntarily. But I mean, if that was possible, then there wouldn't have been a need for a CSA or anything else in the first place. It was possible to make voluntary arrangements. That's what I don't get.
Exactly. I think where there's people, there's always disputes. For a lot of people, however, they can agree matters directly. But for a significant majority, they just can't agree anything. And unfortunately, the children get dragged into this. And the new regime, as we'll start to say, introduces different charges where parents arguably are penalised for using this new child maintenance service.
So they're penalised for not reaching an agreement between themselves, and particularly the let's say, I'll try not to get stereotypes, but stereotypically it is the father, and I know that's not always the case, but the father who's not paying, if it goes to the child maintenance service, then, I mean, he faces a charge for whatever he's got, they end up getting him to pay. Is that right?
That's right. A mother in that type of situation can simply say to the father, no, I don't agree. I'm going to go through the child maintenance service. I'm going to use your pay and collect, which means automatically the father is charged 20% on top of the child maintenance payments, and there's absolutely nothing the father can do about that.
Okay, and the charge would be what? So if he said he's got to pay, I don't know, £100 a week, say, then there's a 20% charge in it. So he'd actually have to pay, what, £120
Exactly, yes.
And for the mother in this case, I think it's a 4% charge.
Exactly,
on that,
yes.
Which would go to the child maintenance service. We can speak to Sumi Rabindrakumar, who's from Gingerbread, the charity for single parents. We'll talk more shortly, but in a nutshell, what's your concern about the current service?
So our concern is that parents are effectively being told to go it alone on child maintenance, because this structure of introducing charges and some of the sort of communication that's given to parents is very much about discouraging them from seeking help from the government and trying to come to an arrangement by themselves, which, as has been pointed out, isn't always possible. And one point to particularly make clear is that the single parent or the parent with care can't choose to get the statutory service to collect payment. What they have to do first is go through a system where maintenance attempts to be paid directly between the parents first, and only once that has been not paid, where payments have been missed, can the case be moved into what's called the collection service, where those charges are incurred. So where you have a payment that isn't paying regularly, there's actually quite a long time period before you can get a proper statutory service, which is ensuring that maintenance is paid and collected on time and in full.
But you'd understand their argument that in the past what had happened, instead of trying to work out something voluntarily, it was almost felt easier, naively perhaps, but it felt easier to say, right, over to the CSA, you sort it out. At which point, people started getting official terrifying letters in brown envelopes, and that just lit a fire under the whole thing.
Well, I mean, what Gingerbread hears time and time again is that single parents don't use the statutory system lightly. No one likes red tape and form filling. No one likes those letters in the brown envelope. And if parents could get fair maintenance paid regularly and in full, they would happily not use the system. But unfortunately, in reality, that doesn't happen for many parents, and the system is used out of necessity. And where a parent has a difficult relationship or there's been domestic abuse in their history, these new charges can actually put them off reporting non-payment to avoid risking further conflict. So the kind of image that you have that parents can sort of come to their own arrangements, that payment can be made directly, happily between parents, is actually not the case in reality.
If you've got experience of this, then do get in touch with us, 85058, or call for free 0500 909 693. Ravi has done so. Ravi, you've got sort of a particular angle on this. Just briefly tell us your circumstances. Thanks for calling.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, yes. Mine is the exact opposite. I mean, I've been waiting for this moment for years for the old system to die a death, or the old child support agency, and something new come in, which was a lot fairer to parents like myself, who has the child exactly half the time. Now, previously, with the child support agency, they were not interested in who looked after the child. All they were concerned about was who got the child benefit. I never got the child benefit, just through technical, just as parents applied for it. So because she got the child benefit, she got the child tax credits, she got the working tax credits, I also had to pay her money, even though I had the child half the time. Under the new rules now, they do take into account who looks after the child. I applied to the new child support agency last year, and I was told under the new rules, neither parent should be paying. But in the meantime, I will have to continue paying to my ex-wife because I'm still under the old rules. And only last week, my sort of case came to an end. It's now closed. I will no longer have to pay my ex-wife any money whatsoever, as long as we look after the child half the time, which we will.
So if we'd been under this system sort of 10 years ago, whenever it was that you split up, you wouldn't have paid anything?
No, I would. No. On the new system, I pay nothing.
Okay.
Even though nothing has changed, except the rules have changed. They're a lot fairer now.
Okay. Well, I suppose we haven't got the benefit of speaking to your ex-wife. There might be some issue here in terms of your wealth compared to her wealth, even having the child half the time. Now, it might be irrelevant on being devil's advocate here, but you might be a multimillionaire. She might be struggling. Therefore, I know that's a slightly different thing, but was that in play at all here?
No. The child support agency, they were only interested in who got the child.
No, I understand that, but sort of morally speaking, if you like, was there any sort of disparity in income?
Oh, no, none whatsoever. When we divorced, she took half of what that she wanted or she needed. She took a half of everything. So it was all a level playing field. I even had to fight to have half the care for my own child. Because for some reason, the mother, she decides how much time she spends with the other parent. I had to fight for that as well, right at the beginning. Yeah.
So what is the situation now? Does she want money from you now?
No, I've heard nothing.
Okay. All right.
I think she knows she's not entitled to anything. The new rules are a lot fairer to parents who actually do look after their children.
Okay, Ravi, thanks for that. I mean, this is a slightly different can of worms, isn't it, James? Because there's an issue over who should get the child benefit in the first place, isn't there? If you're sharing, if there's shared residency.
Yes, it seems almost a ridiculous foundation that all of this stems from which parent gets the child benefit. And certainly I've experienced cases where there is a shared care arrangement and there's two children. So to equalise everything, one parent claims child benefit for one child and vice versa for the other one. I hear what the caller says. There's always the perception of what's fair, depending on where you are. I think what it does underline is the fact that paying maintenance to the other parent, it's really paying maintenance for the benefit of the child. And my concern with these new rules as they're being rolled out for a lot of people is that the deductions, particularly from the stereotypical mother in that situation, the 4% being deducted from that maintenance is 4% that would have been better spent on the children.
Can I ask you both to have a listen to Liz? She's got a slightly different take on this, I suppose. As you'll hear, she's had a 7-year battle to get ultimately just £40 a week she wants out of the father of a child, who she says is from a very wealthy family. There's a slight complication in that they originally lived in South Africa, then came home, and a lot of his family and maybe the money is in South Africa. But whether that's irrelevant or not, it's worth sharing. She's no fan of the outgoing CSA system. Her big beef now is that all their records seem to be disappearing into the ether, and she's faced with starting the whole innovating business all over again.
It's something that I can't even afford to contemplate. Having to do everything again, start from scratch. What has happened to the database? Why has all this past information and case history not been passed on to the new agency? I think it's a complete national travesty.
Give us a flavour of the complexities of the argument that you've had over the last, is it 10 years now?
Yes, well, since 2009, so that's
Right.
7 years. Well, basically, I was left to find my ex-husband and to prove to the CSA, and I've got hundreds of emails from them, and it's all recorded. It's all recorded by emails and letters, and the fact that they were leaving the mothers to find the fathers. They couldn't do the detective work. So that's surprising because they have more access to information than a struggling single mother would ever have. So I was left to track him down. And I used a company called SurveyMonkey, and they gave me a list of recent addresses down in Cambridgeshire. And the last known one, well, I was living down in Weymouth at the time, having moved there, coming back from Cape Town. We were living in Cape Town. And on the way back from the NEC in Birmingham, where I was at a trade show, I went past, I did a detour to Cambridgeshire, looked up this address, asked my son, who was, 7 at the time, to knock on the door, and sure enough, the new wife answered. That's all I needed to know, was this is where he was. I had to then hand this information to the CSA. Meanwhile, my ex-husband, who we never saw, never heard from, he never sees his son, had called the social workers in Weymouth, who dragged my son out of school and cross-examined this poor child about why his mother was stalking his father. And this was the sort of side effects of the responsibilities that the CSA were leaving the single parent with. I mean, I know it's not all single mothers. There are some single fathers, of course, but this is the onus is put squarely on the struggling single parent. So that's how the ball started rolling. Eventually being able to track him down, and then over the ensuing years, it was the fact that he denied he had any income. My ex-husband has never had to work a day in his life. His family are immensely wealthy, which is why I lost everything in several years in the divorce courts in Cape Town, because I couldn't keep up. I couldn't fight and defend myself against this open purse that his solicitor had, a very aggressive solicitor in Cape Town. So I lost everything, all my beautiful homes, all my savings. I spent over £500,000 on legal fees, but that is by the by. We lost everything. Myself and my son returned back to the UK with absolutely nothing apart from a suitcase. And we had to live in an old, damp caravan behind my mother's with no running water, no electricity, until social housing found us and gave us a tiny little social housing flat where we've been living on benefits ever since. Now, this is from having 3 beautiful properties in Cape Town that I derived an income from as guest houses. and this was all my own money. This was money I'd earned in London for years, working in London. Nothing to do with my ex-husband's family or wealth. So it was all my own money that I lost. So having to start from scratch with a small child I was crippled physically and emotionally, and having to fight through that and fight with the CSA was an absolute living nightmare. So after a few years, they eventually got him to come to an adjudicating panel in Glasgow, where they established that he could afford £40 a week. We've been getting £40 a week. No increases, annual increases, nothing like that, just £40 a week ever since. For a wealthy family like my ex-husband's, Connor's grandfather lives in a massive mansion in Totteridge, and, they own things like an Aston Martin DB5, which is worth it's the same one as...
They can afford £40 a week.
Well, yes. But the trust income was never taken into consideration. It's ruled out. So it doesn't matter if it's £100,000, which he gets, or whether it's millions. That income is not included in the assessment. So all of this hard work, all of this trial and tribulation, trying to get money from my ex-husband, resulted in a pathetic £40 a week, even though I had a court order from Cape Town ordering far more than that. I couldn't do anything about it. We had to come home because we would have been living in a township in South Africa if we'd stayed. The way I see it, the CSA handing over to this new agency is akin to a used car garage renaming itself and pretending to have new owners after too many customers have complained. What's happened to the database? Why has all this information and case history not been passed on to the new agency? I don't believe that the entire database of child maintenance cases has simply disappeared. But that's what they say. They don't have it. They don't know what's happened to it. Now it's up to me, before November, I've got a month or so to find my ex-husband again, re-establish. He's really gone to ground now. He doesn't post anything on social media. He doesn't have any telephone numbers. He knows how to hide everything. He's put everything in his new wife's name, I have no doubt. But they're living a very high lifestyle, according to the evidence that's come out. So I have no money. I can't afford to buy my son's shoes, but I now have to trace him again.
I suppose your experience does rather point up the inadequacies of the old system, in that the old system, the CSA, was supposed to find your husband. Now, it proved itself, really, with all its resources, of being incapable or unwilling to do it. So you had to find him anyway. So in that sense, it wouldn't make a lot of difference being in the new system because you've had to do all the searching anyway.
Well, they say it wasn't their responsibility to find the ex-husband, that they aren't a detective agency, they don't do that, so they would never have taken that responsibility in the first place. Yeah.
So now you just got to go back to the beginning. Can you understand what they say are the benefits of the system? Is that the parents will promote the financial responsibility that parents have for their children, and just the parents are sorted out between themselves?
Yes. Oh my goodness. If they think that people can just, after being divorced, separated, fighting through the CSA all these years, and all the troubles that they've been through, can suddenly happily come together and come to a resolution. That's what the letter says that's been handed out to people. You and your ex-husband, ex-partner must resolve the situation yourselves and come to an agreement. How on earth is that going to work?
That's a very desperate Liz. James Maguire, divorce lawyer. Just this idea that the whole database has been sort of disappeared into the ether. Can that be true?
I don't know exactly if that's true, but what I'd say is, obviously, if the facts and circumstances are there, the information is there, the evidence is there. So there are, as that particular caller suggested, a very difficult father who's not going to disclose his whereabouts, not going to disclose his income or assets, but the information that's been gathered so far could be used to support any claim. I get the sentiment from that in that she's got to start all over again, and that perhaps is true. What these changes perhaps don't make known, it's all the publicity about the charges that are levied, but actually under the old CSA regime, they had what's called a departure category, where a parent's income was not comparable with their lifestyle, the situation that they could be living in a £5 million house, but they declare to the CSA that they earn £100 a week. The CSA could look at those inconsistencies and say that cannot be right, your income must be a lot higher, and they could assess a father. Now, under the new CMS rules, that's gone.
Right, so he can have his £1 million trust fund, and, well, the CSA were no help before, but the CMS has got no power to be of any help now.
Exactly. That particular caller, her circumstances are very specific. There's an international element there. There are other tools available, one being Schedule 1 under the Children Act, which does allow for financial provision for the child. But sometimes it's be careful what you wish for. Lawyers sometimes quite rightly get a bad rap about making these situations worse. But through the court system, there's a lot of discretion for the courts to attempt to do justice. The alternative with the CSA or the CMS regime, it's very much based on a formula. The good thing about that is it cuts the lawyers out because it makes it very specific in that is the assessment and the amount they have to pay. But there will always be those circumstances where someone says it is unfair.
OK, thanks for that, James Maguire.